Yesterday, I came across this post on my timeline and I instantly shared it to my story and asked musicians who follow me to react to it with their unfiltered thoughts. And expectedly, the reactions were quite visceral. Welcome to the Chronicles of Narayana with me, Vijaynarain. So let's break down what this advertisement says. It's asking for a music creator. Note the verbiage, they're using the word creator, not artist, not music composer, because one of the requirements of this job posting is that the person should be well versed with AI, generative AI music tools. This is something that's been a point of much contention among the artistic community, and rightly so. Let's just take a look at what's been going on the last 3 or 4 years in the AI space and acknowledge that there has been a huge amount of advancement that's happened in a very short span of time, and the entire world is grappling with it. So, be it generative AI or large language models or agentic AI that can pretty much like take access of your computer and do things for you. It's just a crazy world out there, and there is so much information that people are still trying to make sense of. So this AI wave is here to stay, and it does have its advantages. I mean, there are so many applications like medical research, for example, finding cures to rare diseases, right? So there is a lot of data available, and with large language models, AI is able to make sense of that data and possibly recommend like newer combinations of therapies or newer cures. And there is also the application of data cleanup using AI, which can be used in a variety of industries. AI is not objectively a bad thing. The reason AI is so controversial is because it has a huge strain on natural resources. And this is something that's not being spoken about enough, in my opinion, because you see countries in the developing world like India opening up business for the establishment of new data centers when India by itself is going through a climate crisis. Whether or not you believe in climate science, is it really worth depleting our water resources for the benefit of short-term gains through the establishment of data centers? That's a topic for another day. The application of AI right now is more of a directive that's coming from every CEO in every company, in every industry, rather than a measured approach to what are the important problems that AI can solve today. So it's become sort of a buzzword. The reason for this is that we are in late stage capitalism, and most of these companies that are at the forefront of AI are, of course, American companies, and America is the torchbearer of late stage capitalism, right? A highly individualistic society that puts profits ahead of everything else. And so when a CEO hears that AI can automate XYZ amount of work, and that means that they can get rid of X percentage of their workforce, they will jump onto it. This passes down the chain of command as well. So your average tech bro, your product manager, every time you have a conversation with them, it's always about how awesome this new version of Claude is and how it's going to replace everything, so on and so forth. One of the consequences of this kind of thinking is that it erodes empathy. And you cannot be rich beyond a point without being a sociopath or without having very less empathy, which is why most of the billionaires you see are some of the cruelest people you will find. Now, when this passes down a chain of command, it is of course sanitized in the name of corporate processes, and even empathy is commoditized in the form of CSR initiatives. For example, buying a couple of green credits when you're flying, when you're taking a flight, pay a couple of dollars extra and you feel like you've really saved the environment. So empathy is commoditized, and when it passes down the chain of command, your average tech bro does not necessarily behave like a sociopath, but their need to be a good person is fulfilled by a performative thing like paying a couple of dollars extra or participating in a CSR initiative. So how does a tech bro like this fill that gaping void where there used to be a little bit of empathy and kindness? Well, they do what they know best. They use technology to solve a problem that doesn't exist. And instead of actually taking art classes, your average tech bro will think, hey, why don't I create something using AI that can generate the art for me? And that's what has led us to this situation where we've got tools that generate artworks in different styles, tools that generate musical content, tools that generate videos, and the people who use these tools call themselves AI artists. Now, that's an ironic term, right? That brings us to this topic of this role that has been advertised by a big label. Some of you talked about how this is illegal, but there's always a workaround for this. I mean, these companies could, and I think they are, potentially partnering with a lot of huge music labels who have huge catalogs, and they have essentially bought out the rights from the artists that they paid. And now these labels are in a position to sell these rights to the AI companies And one of those rights may include the right to train their algorithms on all of this artistic content. Now, how these companies will justify it is by saying that every time, your song is used to train an AI model, you'll probably get like a rupee or two. If you're thinking that's hardly anything, then I have news for you. You should check out the royalties that artists get paid today. So I don't think there are going to be legal problems in using tools to generate music by itself. There will be problems for musicians who are actually not musicians but just hacks and are very good at prompting, because when they use stems that are generated by AI, these AI companies will of course want to own the copyright to their stems. And so what they essentially do is give you a license to use it, but when you upload it tomorrow, they could potentially say that it's also their content. So you have to be very careful about using it. What does this imply for you and me as musicians? Well, am I saying that these tools are entirely bad? Once again, I would like to give the benefit of doubt and play the devil's advocate and say that no, it is not entirely useless, because I have tried a couple of these AI tools and I was quite blown away by how polished and incredible the music generated by it was. Now, personally, I would never use a single byte of AI generated music in my songs, in my final production, because I feel like that sort of diminishes who I am as an artist, and that boils down to a personal integrity question. A lot of applications for music, for content, don't necessarily come from an artistic standpoint. Take, for example, advertisement agencies. A lot of advertisement agencies also have people who may be good at one sort of creative thing, like coming up with briefs for ads, but may not necessarily be good with identifying the right music content. And for them, generative AI is a quick solution to find something to fill the requirement of a music composer with in record time, because they usually like press for time. I know it sounds a bit soulless, but if you've ever worked with ad agencies, you know what I'm talking about. Standard disclaimer, whatever I've said does not apply to all musicians or all music labels or all AI companies or all tech bros or all labels, or you get the point. So what are the applications of generative AI in music that I see as being useful? Well, you could potentially use it for prototyping. Like, you might have an idea where you've developed the tune, you've developed the lyrics, which essentially means that you own the copyright. Then you might even do arrangements yourself. And then perhaps you could use Gen AI to mock up the rest of the arrangements to see what it sounds like, and then take a call on if that's the direction you want to go, and then continue with your production as you usually would. So it doesn't hurt to take a bit of inspiration from what that sounds like. But that's pretty much the extent to which I have found it potentially useful. Like I said, I would never use a single stem that was generated by AI, because that personally feels like an affront to my creativity. Is it fair for us musicians to be up in arms and protest these kind of advertisements that we just saw? Well, I don't know if it's fair or not, but this is here to stay. Companies are going to find these kind of roles, and increasingly so, where they need somebody who may have musical knowledge, but they may also have AI knowledge, which means they're going to combine this to come up with faster prototypes of songs. I think it's already happening where a lot of music is being generated by AI, but then it's being re-recorded or reprogrammed manually, and that way there's plausible deniability of usage of AI, and you still get like a song. So this, if you notice, the advertisement calls for a certain type of music, so which is mostly the kind of music that becomes instant hits. I do see this job advert as something that's not entirely out of the blue, and I see why it exists. These kind of roles are inevitable, and they are going to increase in number, especially when it comes to big companies, big production companies, big labels. Already a lot of the streaming platforms are filled with AI content. The other day I was listening to a playlist and it started sounding very sus. So when I looked it up, it turned out to be an entire playlist of AI generated slop. And there was no indication that any of this music was artificial intelligence or a toggle that I could switch on to only listen to human made music. So this is going to be a territory where we have to navigate quite carefully. As artists, what can we do to preserve our artistic integrity in a world where this is going to become the norm? Well, the first thing we can do is continue to make original music and put it out there for people to listen to. Today, we live in the era of social media where discovery happens at the mercy of algorithms, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't happen at all. And a lot of people are doing a really good job with marketing it. So, creating art is one part, But treating it like content, unfortunately, is the other part where you have to think about how you sell that art to people, right? So one of the things you can do is leverage social media and continuously put your stuff out there. Point number two is do live shows. If you're a musician, you should definitely upskill to become a live musician, because nothing beats the feeling of connecting with your audience in person when they're in front of you, and an AI is not going to replace that. So this is absolutely crucial because, like I said, art builds empathy. And when you're jamming with other musicians, it teaches you how to collaborate, how to give them space, how to work with a team, and how to interact with a large set of humans who have come in person to listen to you perform. So by all means, do a lot of live shows and keep performing. Doesn't matter if it's 5 people or 100 people. Keep doing live shows because that's the best way to connect with your core audience and grow it. The other thing I would advise is when you're releasing music independently, see if there are any alternate streams of monetization. Now, if you've built a core audience, try selling that music to your core audience rather than just putting it on streaming platforms. One of the things that you could do, and a lot of musicians are doing it in the West, and it's also slowly starting to catch up in India, is sell vinyl records, because that is actually a very cool way of consuming music and it encourages active listening, because when you're listening to a vinyl record, you're actually clued in. It's an activity where you're sitting and listening to the entire record. Have listening sessions if that's necessary, right? Call people, have ticketed listening sessions where they can come listen to your album on vinyl and potentially even buy it. One of the other things you could do is try selling a copy of your music like the old times. There are websites like Bandcamp that allow you to do that. So I am actually thinking about doing that. Maybe sort of an early access to your core fans where they can own the music and in a way also support you in creating more music. And then eventually it makes its way to the streaming platforms for everybody else to listen to. Last but not the least, try to own the rights to your music if you can, because you never know when one of your songs will put you in the limelight and suddenly everybody starts discovering your back catalog. And typically that is when a lot of labels will suddenly discover that you exist as an artist, even if you've been doing stellar work for the last how many ever years, right? Because that's typically how A&R seems to work today, where they wait for somebody to blow up and then they play catch up and then they can claim that they discovered you. But do own the rights to your songs so that you get to decide what you want to do with your music. So these are my closing thoughts on this entire thing, and I would love to know what you think of all of this. So do engage with me in the comments, and yeah, thank you for staying for so long.